environmentalists and experts that we were walking on eggshells and that we had to be very careful when getting oil out of the ground. Could you give us an update in terms of the exploration where we are at, but also in terms of managing that fragile ecosystem?
We did tell the nation then that government of Uganda was taking a very cautious approach in the way it was approaching oil and gas exploration and production. And we had two phases, as you know. We had the exploration phase, which took place in one of the most sensitive ecosystems, as you know, including Murchison Falls Conservation Area, or call it Albertine Graben. But because the environment was a fundamental pillar in the oil and gas program, we did a lot of work in forecasting impacts, in mitigating them, in avoiding sensitive areas using the mitigation hierarchy, where the most sensitive ones areas, you avoid them. And I'm proud that the exploration phase of oil and gas program for Uganda went successfully, 100%. If you go to Murchison now, where exploration wells were, you will find wildlife roaming around. You won't even know that there was once exploration. So we were able to get exploration phase perfectly well in as far as the environment is concerned.
Were there any environmental concerns?
Of course, a lot of them. Any oil and gas project will always come with environment concerns, spills, biodiversity loss, pollution of air, water, and land, and so many others. But because we were able to project these and prescribe mitigation measures, and oil companies and the government listened, we were able to get it very right. Now the big elephant is arriving very soon, as you know, the production phase. We did what we did in exploration phase, mitigation measures, impact forecasting, sustainable exploration, rather production methods, appropriate technology, and so far so good. In the production phase, we haven't had any challenge. As you know, the three flagship projects are on course. That's the Tirenga, the Kingfisher, and the ECOP. They are on course. So Uganda is optimistic, and we are optimistic to get first oil come this year.
How are you enforcing those mitigation measures that you put in place?
We do routine monitoring and inspections. And we also work very, very closely with the oil and gas regulator, which is Petroleum Authority of Uganda, plus other stakeholders, for example, the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development for Occupational Health, and then the Ministry of Water and Environment for water-related aspects. We do annual audits under the National Environment Act. Every project that has significant environment impacts is required to do annual environment audits. So all oil and gas projects are in that category. And so they must undertake annual environment audits so that if there is any lapse, if there is any gap, we identify it early enough to be able to forestall any problem. And so far, so good, as you know. If there was any problem, you would know. You are in Uganda. So far, we are progressing very well. And we thank God for that. If we remain the same way we are, if we remain committed the way we have been, we believe that we shall be a global example where oil and gas production in a very sensitive ecosystem can actually happen without compromising the environment. There may be residual impacts. You may not mitigate everything. There may be some residual impacts, but every form of development comes with impact. Even just you walking on grass, you are killing insects sometimes. So there is no development that comes with zero impact. So there will be some residual impacts, but what's important is to minimize and mitigate the big impacts, and then the residual impacts, we can offset them.
You know, Dr. Kankwasa, as you're speaking, I've been thinking widely about how the conversations at the global scale are changing. You know, Donald Trump, the president of the United States and the US, as you know, leads narratives, has really gone big into oil exploration in Venezuela. Everyone is now talking about fossil fuels, driving global economies and global development. Here in Uganda, you know, there was pushback. You know, at the time when we had the show with you, we were talking about, is it sustainable? Because the world is now going into clean energy. The world is going into increasing on hydroelectricity power, you know, clean, you know, wind energy, solar, you know, electric vehicles. And we were worried that we were very late for the table. But now that conversation is coming back. As an environmentalist, are you worried about the global trends and the rising conversations on the fossil fuels as an avenue to power global economies, including that of Uganda? Do you have any worry as an environmentalist?
I'm definitely very worried because climate change is real, and the biggest contributors to climate change, as you know, has been global warming coming from industrial revolution, mainly in the West. The top polluters of the world, as you know today, is US, is China, is India, is Russia, and of course, Europe. So our view in Africa is that the biggest polluters must take urgent measures to reduce release of emissions so that we can remain on track to meeting the 1.5 degrees Celsius goal of preventing a calamity in our planet.
And yet you're pushing for exploration and full production of fossil fuels in Uganda. Isn't that double standards?
No, we've discussed this before. There is a principle of first in, first out. That's a principle we discuss for fair global economic trade. First in, first out. Uganda's contribution to global emissions is less than 0.1. So if you tell Uganda to exit when it is just arriving, first of all, you are not addressing the problem, because the biggest polluters who are fundamental, who must reduce. Because if they don't, even if Uganda was at zero, it wouldn't make a difference. Even if Uganda is not emitting any emission to the environment, the global calamity would still remain. So under the principle of first in, first out, which is what you have been singing about, energy transition. You remember the song of energy transition? Energy transition means you transit. You transit. You don't just stop. It's a transition. Transition is a process, not an event. So the idea was that the big polluters will transition to green energy, and that will significantly reduce the emissions. Even small countries like Uganda, in terms of emissions, we also agreed to transition. And that's why you are aware that Uganda's small contribution to emissions is still being mitigated. And the money from oil and gas was meant to power, and will actually power, energy transition. So Uganda, for it remains on course. We remain committed to our nationally determined contributions. Our emission targets are still on course. We have not changed the course. You have seen Chira Motor Corporation. We are still committed to transitioning from fossil fuels powered engines to electric engines. And you've seen border borders on our road. You've seen Kayora bus, and more are coming. Boats, tractors, all electric. Not from private sector, from government. Chira Motor Corporation is a government investment. So that tells you clearly that Uganda government is commitment to energy transition is still on course and has not changed, despite the big polluters backtracking on their promises. And we still call upon them to look at their economies, look at what they are likely to cause the world, and reflect on what will happen if the temperatures rise beyond 1.5 degrees Celsius from the prehistoric levels. Because there is already melting glaciers, as you know. Glaciers are already melting. You've seen heat waves even here in Uganda. So we still believe that the world must not backtrack on their commitments.
Dr.
And Uganda is still committed.
Dr. Kankwasa, what moral authority do you have as Uganda to speak to Donald Trump's face, the United States, which is one of the biggest emitters, you've said, to honor their agreement and reduce on carbon emissions, yet you're adding millions of barrels into the oil sector that is going to be consumed globally?
No, when we went to Glasgow, you remember Glasgow? That's where the discussion on energy transition really gained traction. We made commitments. Uganda made its commitments. We submitted our nationally determined contributions. And we committed that we shall do A, B, C, D. These emissions we are supposed to put in the environment were part of the equation, were part of what commitments and how we shall mitigate them happen. You know? So Uganda's commitments have not changed. What we are calling upon other countries that respect your commitments as well.
So you're saying we will pollute, but we will also...
No. We are saying we shall power the energy transition. To transition energy, you must need money. You must get money. Chira Motor Corporation will not happen if you don't have funding, okay?
So you sell the oil and gas?
Yeah, you
get
sell
money.
Oil, and then because oil is a finite resource, it will not remain there. You get that revenue, you power the energy transition, diversify your economy so that it is no longer depending on fossil fuels. And that's the magic bullet. Nobody is going to tell you that we are going to say, tomorrow, all of us will stop driving vehicles, will stop the planes. No, the world will collapse. And in fact, environment will be damaged more.
Do we have that master plan?
Of the world?
Of the transition? No, for Uganda.
Yeah. We have energy transition plan for the country. We have the plan, very, very costed, well prepared. And it tells us when shall we be, where, the energy mix. That's why you've heard about solar, for example, coming on board. You've even heard about nuclear power discussions. You've heard about it. All those are part of the energy transition for Uganda. It's not an illusion. It's a plan already on paper. It's a plan already approved, and it's online. You can access it.
It's interesting. I'll be happy to look at it because
we mean business.
Global economies. Business. Yeah, there are countries that are really serious.
Uganda is one of them. Uganda means business. We don't just talk for the sake of talking. We already have our energy transition plan for a country. We are one of the few countries that already have an energy transition plan. We were one of the first countries to submit our nationally determined contributions. And we are on course to meeting our commitments. despite challenges or disruptions here and there.
You know, the reason why I've taken time on this, because a couple of years ago, there were commitments by the global north, including from the heavy emitters like the aviation industry. There's research and funding that was put into getting clean energy, alternative sources of fuel to power the airplanes.
Hydrogen energy, for example.
Exactly. There are companies, organizations, and countries that committed to do the electric, road to electric vehicles. Where they're putting rechargeable points. Countries like Norway, who are heavy oil
producers.
Producers. We are cutting
production.
Production. And they're increasing more incentives to make people buy electric cars. So I thought that we had made progress, despite all that, but now it seems like that progress is going down. What would you speak to Donald Trump's conversation or narrative that climate change is a hoax?
Well, I can only say that science is clear. We have intergovernmental Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC. This is a panel of top experts, top scientists on the planet from all over the world. They've done simulations. They've done actual analysis of global temperatures, right from pre-industrial historic levels to now. And the science is quite very clear. There is no ambiguity. Science is clear that global warming is a reality. Temperatures have been rising. And even here in Uganda, we've seen it. Seasons which we used to have shifted. Haven't you experienced shifted seasons? Haven't you experienced that now you may not predict when the rainy season will start as it used to be? Our forefathers would know that this month the rains will start. We all have seen this change. But measuring of global temperature is not rocket science. It is simple science. The thermometer is very clear that the global temperatures have been rising. We've seen glaciers melt. So it is not a matter of conjecture or contestation. The science is clear that global warming is happening. Now, the science is also clear that as the world warms more, there will be catastrophe, because we shall not be able to adapt that easily. It will take a lot of investment for the planet to adapt to these changes in the temperature. Let me give you an example. To adapt to climate change, for example, for the case of Uganda, all of us should have capacity to have an air conditioner in our houses, every citizen, so that when there are extremes in heat or extremes in cold, we are able to remain in between. That requires energy, that requires investment. But that is even not the worst case scenario. That's where you can adapt. Talk about small island states. If the glaciers melt and the water levels on seas and oceans rise, some countries will disappear completely from the world. They will disappear. They will go under. You've seen slight changes in water levels on Lake Victoria here, and you saw what happened here. Now, how about if there was, say, 2% rise in the water levels? What would be the impact? So, climate change is real, and we must take it very, very seriously, and we must take measures, one, to prevent further pollution, further emissions, and also take urgent measures to mitigate and take urgent measures to adapt our communities. Because if we don't adapt, we shall be wiped out. And you know, the rule of the jungle is survival for the fittest. That's a natural law.
Yeah. You see, does that global narrative have an effect on the global south? Calling climate change a hoax, withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, and funding to environmental projects, does it in any way affect the global south?
Unfortunately, yes, because the biggest polluters are mainly in the north, the biggest. And that's where the narrative you are saying of climate change being hoax is gaining traction. But I don't think it is the whole of the north. It is. I think I am aware of only one country. So I think it is not as gloomy as it is. There are still many countries that are fully committed to meeting their climate goals, including Uganda, and so many other countries in the north, in the west. So we need to now convince the few who are prioritizing economy more than nature. We are not saying economy is not important. Economy is actually very important. But then we need to strike a balance. We shouldn't be blinded by profits only, because profits only cannot heal the planet. And once the planet is injured, the money will be meaningless to you if you have no air to breathe.
All right. Talking about profit versus the environment, let me come back home here, because we've seen that manifest here in Uganda, where we see businessmen and entrepreneurs, abusing the environment for profits. Let me speak to the scenario of the Speak Resort Hotel in Entebbe, where clearly there were stories that were published in the dailies that the entrepreneur there, and that is Mr. Sudhir Paredia, was reclaiming, the lake and the land there, and there was heavy environmental degradation there for that project that perhaps some people have argued has increased on the amounts of water in Chituburu. I'm sure you go along the Entebbe Road very well, and you can notice that the water levels are almost getting to the lake.
To the road.
To the road, sorry. There used to be a beach. I grew up in Entebbe. So we used to, from school, park and then go get on that beach and try to swim in that water. This time, the water has now come very close to the road. And some people think it's because of the degradation and environmental abuse that happened there. Could you, and at the time it was very controversial, so I'd love to hear from you what really happened.
So,
did you give an environmental and social impact assessment to that project of Speak Resort before it started?
So Speak Resort project at Chituru, first of all, hasn't taken off. That's one. So it's a chunk of land. In fact, Sesegate lost about 5 acres of land to the water. And that was our fights with the Speak Resort proprietor. Then, when we closed the development, our argument was, since water levels have risen and 5 acres or so of the land is now underwater, you cannot build on that land because it is no longer your land. Water has reclaimed itself because water has right of way. So those were our altercations with the proprietor, because his argument was that I have a land title and my land boundary is known. so I should build on my land. We said, no, you have a land title, but the water levels have increased and water has taken part of the land. So we must now calculate the lake buffer from where the current water line is. And we suspended the works there, if you remember, for about 6 months, haggling on what can happen and what cannot happen. And eventually, the developer accepted to use only the dry part of the land that remained. But even then, development hasn't taken place there. It's only a gate on the road. There are no developments inside. The project is not yet up and running. And so it cannot be true that it is the cause of water levels. But the point of degradation contributing is also correct. If you dig close to the lake shores and you result into siltation of the lake, you will definitely displace water. Okay? If you destroy wetlands, which are supposed to be buffers, because when the water levels come, the waves come, the wetlands are supposed to receive the wave, and then the water will remain moving properly. But if the wave comes and finds you have built now on the wetland, you have actually now displaced its movement. So instead of coming into the wetland to be absorbed as a sponge, you are pushing it to extend where there is no physical obstruction. So that can also cause flooding. So the point you are raising is also valid. Degradation of wetlands and poor agricultural practices that leads to siltation of the lake can contribute to flooding. But the immediate cause of water levels was
Increasing
increased precipitation.
But before even
Across the Great Lakes region generally. It wasn't only Uganda. Actually, if you were following, South Sudan was heavily flooded. Rwanda was heavily flooded. Kenya was heavily flooded. Kenya, they lost over 50 people in floods that time. Actually, it is only Uganda which survived. All the rest of the countries around us lost a significant number of lives and property. So we thank God we survived.
Dr. Kamkwesi, let me go back to that project. Before any construction happens, you must get an environment and social impact assessment report and therefore cleared by NEMA.
Correct.
Did you clear the Speaks Resort project?
Yes, it had been cleared before, in the past, before actually the water levels. But when the water levels came, and when I came in, I still suspended the works despite them having a certificate. One, because the certificate is not rigid, things change. The certificate has conditions. Which conditions? One of the conditions is, in the case of any unforeseen natural phenomena, the certificate must change. That's a standard condition in certificates. Now, water levels had increased. So there is no would have allowed, despite him having a certificate, wouldn't have allowed him to build on the normal land title, which land title was no longer dry, because a big chunk of it is already in water. In fact, if you go to Google Map now, and you put in Chituburu, you will see the former Sese Gateway Beach boat docking facility. It is still in water. It is almost like 600 meters deep in water, but it is still standing. There is even a shelter still standing in water. So there is no would allow construction to go up to that point when the land is now underwater. So to answer your question, yes, he had a certificate. But when we came in, we said, yes, even if you have a certificate, we must respect nature. And that's why we stopped the project, as you know, and we forced him to redesign the project to fit into only the dry part. And we thank God and thank him because he obliged. We closed the facility for 6 months. I remember deploying armed personnel there for almost 3 months.
How was it like for you to take on Sudiro Parade?
Well,
and speak as a whole?
It was one of the welcome to NEMA affairs, because I was less than 6 months in office then. So it was one of the welcome to NEMA, baptism of fire, call it. But you see, there is no easy job. There is no easy job. And nobody is above the law, as you know. The law is above us all.
Yeah, interesting. But sometimes there are people who could be a bit above the law. And perhaps this takes us to another thing that I've always been wanting to ask you. And this is the Nachivubo Channel project.
Yes.
The president wrote to the prime minister to give the project a green light. The Nachivubo Channel development project done by a businessman and rich man, Hamis Chigundu. We saw that letter that leaked. The president, said, I had a meeting with Ham. He showed me the plan and they said he's going to invest his money. And I said, well, this is good. So I wrote to the prime minister, please authorize the project to go on. The project hardly had it started, the floods came. People's property and businesses were affected. I remember looking at this woman who was crying and she said, Emaria, my property has been destroyed. I just gotten a loan. Emaria against it. It was very painful, for many of us who are watching how people's, businesses were destroyed and people were in tears. And many of us were asking, where is NEMA? Why are people going through this? Did NEMA sanction this business? Was there an environment and social impact assessment report that was done? Is the president above the law to just give instructions anytime he wants so that things can be done? So today I have an opportunity of facing you and ask you about this project from the onset.
Yeah.
Did the National Environment Management Authority approve the development of the Nachivubo Blue Channel development project?
You see, I was following media during that time, and I can authoritatively say up to 90% of what was in the media was false. The people didn't have facts at all. When the president blesses an idea, he's not saying, go and break the law. No, that's strategic decision. Strategic decision is different from tactical or operational decision. When you want to go for a journey, you first envision where you want to go, isn't it? Before you go into how you will get there. That's the visioning. You start with the vision. For example, we have Vision 2040 to be a transformed nation where all of us are at least middle income. That's visioning. But now getting there is a technical process. So it's not true that the president said, go and break the law, as was reported. No. The president blessed an idea. Once the president has blessed an idea, it now goes into the stages, the proper way of having it realized. And those stages involved getting approval from KCA, getting approval from NEMA, of course, engineering designs, and then development. So that's how things are. It's not that it started in a wrong way. No. The president blesses an idea. That's at strategic level. Then we go to tactical and operational, which is now technical analysis, licensing, certification. And I want to say all those were eventually done. Now, the idea of floods.
So, slowly, did you give an environment impact assessment report to Hamis Chigundu
100%.
before the construction?
100%. No.
Because they're supposed to be given before the construction starts, right?
There are two phases of that project. There was the first phase of unblocking existing channel, which was business between Hamuchigundu, and KCA, unblocking the existing channel, not actual construction. Okay? That phase started before the environment and social impact assessment because management of drainage and unblocking drainage does not actually require an NEMA certificate. It requires only the sanctioning of a lead agency, which lead agency, in the case of district, is the district, and for the case of Kampala, is KCA. Now, before the actual construction now of the redevelopment of the channel, the redevelopment went through assessment, and the NEMA issued a certificate for the redevelopment. And of course, it was based on consultations of KCA. It was based on consultations of experts. There was a hydrology report from Makerere University, engineering. There were technical designs. There was approval from KCA. So there was nothing that would prevent certification of a redevelopment of the channel. And we did certify the redevelopment with clear conditions. One of the conditions was we should not take the redevelopment piecemeal. It has to be holistic. You have to look at the beginning of the channel to the end when it goes into Lake Victoria. You must foresee the water volumes. You must do hydrological mapping. You must foresee siltation as you develop the project. Because you will get polythene bags, you will get soil, you will get... So those can block the channel and you get a problem. But you also must look at downstream where you are now increasing water flow. Because when you expand the channel, as was the case, because the channel was small and the redevelopment was meant to double its... actually, it moved from 6 meters, 6 feet to 12 feet. So that was actually doubling the size of the channel. You are increasing water flow downwards. So you must not look only at the upstream, you must also look at the enhanced volume you have sent down. So you must ensure that where the water is going, there is no blockage. Because you may address Nachivubo, the town part, then you increase water flow downwards and you cause flooding. So we did analysis of all of those, and we put conditions in a certificate, which we gave him to go and implement, and we are monitoring. And when the flooding came, you remember the president directed an interinstitutional committee to go and assess the floods and identify the cause of flooding. And that committee was Ministry of Water and Environment, was NEMA, was KCA, was Ministry of Works, was UPDF, Engineering Brigade, and a few other members. So they went on the ground and did the flood analysis and assessment, and they confirmed that actually it is not the redevelopment of the channel that was the immediate cause. There were several other factors. And it was not the first time Nachivubo was flooding. We've had flooding of Kampala before. Only that, this time because of hoarding off of the site, and of course, enhanced debris, there was reduced flow of the water from the road into the channel. So it's not that the channel was small not to take the water. No, there was actually reduced water flow into the channel, not the other way around. And the problem was blockage of inlets into the channel. And part of the contribution were arcades, which had been converted. Arcades are supposed to have the underground parking, which has drainage of surface water flow. Now, what happens is that these underground parkings were converted into shops, and so there is no surface water flow properly going into the channel. And then the road inlets were also blocked. That's why, after the inspection of the channel, KCA immediately embarked on opening the drainage of the road on Savannah Road and Allen Road, you remember? Immediately, they unblocked the inlets, water started flowing into the channel, and you've not seen floods again, and it's been raining. So people must not associate the flooding to actually redevelopment of the channel. No, no, no. It could have contributed in a way of debris, because when you are constructing, the soil can also contribute to blocking of inlets. So in as far as that is concerned, that can be a contribution. But it wasn't the sole or immediate cause of flooding. And of course, you are aware that the channel is being redeveloped, and you've not seen the floods again.
As NEMA, did you welcome that project?
100%. You see, redevelopment of the channel is a very good thing, provided, this is important, provided you look at the environment and social impacts holistically. You don't just look at where you are going to build, where your road is passing or where your building is in front. That one cannot work because ecosystem is connected. What happens in the upstream must be linked up to the end point where the water goes into Lake Victoria.
Are you going to ensure that that is
observed? If that is not done, we shall have a problem. It must be done holistically. You must not look at only Owino. The moment you focus only at Owino, the moment you focus only at Owino, you will be displacing a problem.
Downstream.
Yes.
But will you make sure that this is actually followed to the downstream?
We must. And our conditions are very clear. It must be done. KCA is fully aware. Where it cannot be done by the developer harm, KCA must take responsibility and do it, because after all, they are responsible for drainage in Kampala.
No, but you gave an EIA certificate to the project.
Yeah, it has all those conditions. But you see, HAM may not have land rights, for example, downstream. That is government. You get. HAM may not have land rights at Inamachsoni Bay. But HAM can work with KCA and government.
So just slow down here. So whose responsibility is it to work on the downstream? Because you've said for that project to be successful
in a long term
and downstream.
But
HAM is just going to do his section, most likely.
No, we agreed in the approval conditions. We agreed that it cannot be done in isolation. It must be done holistically. If you do it in isolation,
but are there guarantees from Hamis Chigundu that is also going to work on the downstream?
Yeah. He committed. But he must work with KCA, because KCA has the land rights and the ultimate constitutional and legal responsibility for drainage management. So HAM and government must work together to ensure that we have a complete picture. And also, maintenance is very important. You must ensure there is no siltation. You must ensure there is no blockage. You must ensure there is aeration. There must be aeration. So if you addressed all our conditions in the certificate, you will have a successful project.
But do you do routine monitoring?
Yeah. There must be annual audits.
Mr. Kankwasa, have you gone to that project site yourself?
I don't need to have gone there. NEMA has a system. We have technical inspectors. I'm not an engineer. If I go there, I would be just doing media and how do you call it? Whitewashing. No, this is a technical job. You need technical inspectors. Of course, I know the place. I've passed there. But I am not an engineer. So it's a technical work. It's not about photos and video and no. It's technical inspection. And our technical teams have been there and they still go there. And they work very closely with KCA technical teams. And has it not been raining? Have you had the flooding recently? So the mistakes were corrected. And I want to salute the KCA and Hamis Chigundu for taking urgent measures to rectify the problem. The inlets, the channel size is big enough. It can take any type of amount of water. So the problem wasn't the channel not taking water. The problem was water reaching the channel.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about. I'll come back to that
No
just
problem.
later. I hope
Anytime.
for us to look at the downstream and
It's important, and the media, you are our partners in ensuring compliance. You are our voice in ensuring compliance. I want you to host Chigundu or host KC.
I will host you
and say what plans do you have for the downstream, because it's important.
I'm going to reach out to him and see. Hamis
Very
Chigundu,
important.
if you're there, Dr. Kankwasa has asked me to host you, and I'm happy to host you. But let's talk about the other project that left many of us debating, the capacity of NEMA, and that is the Lubiji project, where people were encroached on the
Enforcement.
wetlands. Yeah, the enforcement. You know, I remember cases. NEMA was very strong in destroying infrastructure that was in the Rubiji.
No, in restoring environment, not destroying infrastructure.
Okay, restore. I love that.
Yeah.
In restoring the environment.
Thank
by
you.
destroying of people who built there illegally in the wetlands. However, to date, there's one structure that still remains up, and that is the Starbucks petrol station, which was supposed to be destroyed, at least according to NEMA and what it had done in the past. Why hasn't NEMA destroyed Starbucks?
Where is Starbucks located?
In the wetland.
On a road? Is it hanging? Is it on a river? Where is it located? It's located on a road, isn't it? What road is that? Which road is that one?
It's the
Mitiana,
Kampala
Mitiana road. So are you saying we should remove the road?
No, but why did you remove everyone else?
Yeah, because they were not on the road. I have answered this question before. But you see, let me first answer. The people who were removed in Rubiji were illegal settlements in a wetland. Not in bold, illegal settlements in a wetland ecosystem. And why were they removed? They were removed for two reasons. The first one, their own safety. Because Rubiji is a critical ecosystem for controlling flooding of the city. Now, when flooding happens, these people would be swept by water. When it rains, even currently, even after removing them, water actually goes up to the road. If you've been following, that place floods. So the first point of removing them was for their own safety, to prevent the unthinkable from happening. Secondly, was to ensure that the wetland is restored to perform its ecological functions. Water, buffering of flood control, biodiversity, habitats. There are so many birds there and so many other animals and insects and reptiles that call Rubiji a home. But three, we have fumes and dust in Kampala. The wetland helps us to give us cleaner air. And four, we have pollution, as you know, in Kampala. Pollution from settlements, pollution from industries. You need the wetland to buffer the lakes and rivers so that by the time water goes into Lake Victoria or water goes into Lake Albert, because actually part of Rubiji drains into Lake Albert. So you don't want water to go with all that heavy-laden pollutants. You want wetlands to sieve them so that the lakes can receive clean water. So we needed those functions. Now, the Starbucks you are talking about, as I said before, was not an illegal establishment. It was established in 2017 with approval of government. So it was not an illegal settlement. And why was it approved? It was approved on the location where there was stockpile of materials for construction of Kampala-Mitiana Road. So this was a stockpile area which is adjacent and connected to the road. So unless you are saying we should remove the road, there is no environment significance or benefit for removing Starbucks, which was established there legally way before I came.
Was it given an EIA?
Absolutely. I've told you.
With all the risks that came with that?
2017, which risk? It's on the road. And the road was an authorized government development. So it must not be confused with illegal settlements on the wetland. Because if you cannot restore the wetland where the road is.
But what are the dangers of having a petrol station in a wetland or next to a wetland?
No, wetlands should not be locations for fuel stations.
But you have one there.
But I'm telling you, this was a stockpile area.
But even
stockpile means it's a dry area. You cannot put cement. You cannot put your stones or bricks in water when you are constructing. You would lose them. So you only stockpile on a raised ground. So it was not a swamp that it is backfilled with the soil. No. This was a stockpile area, a material stockpile area. In other words, when you are building, I can give you an example of Busega. You see Busega, there is a stockpile area which was being used by, I think, some construction company. That stockpile area is still there. But it's not swampy. It is not water. But still, of course, we have conserved it now. So the point I'm making is that the area was assessed and deemed suitable then in 2017. And I have no reason in 2025, much as I am a different person, I have no reason to undo, to reverse what was legally and technically assessed and certified in 2017.
But you see, you sort of shooting yourself in the foot. You
How?
told me about the the Speak Resort Munyonyo.
Yes.
EIA that was given to Sudiv.
Correct.
When you came in, you said, you reversed it because things
The
had
water
changed.
levels had changed.
Exactly.
So what changed
But
in
now,
LPG?
but that's what I'm saying. You said you cannot reverse something that was given. But from
Technically and rightly. And there is no intervening factor that has changed. It was a stockpile area then. It was dry. It is still dry. Water has not come to it. It is on the road. The road is still there. So what has changed for me to intervene in that area? I had to intervene because water levels had changed. Now, in the
You
case
worry
of the
that-
fuel station, what has changed?
you worry that in case of a spillage, and if anything, worst case scenario, you don't want to take risks. Do you think we could have a spillover of, this oil and into the wetland in worst case scenario?
Yeah, the risk is not zero. The risk is not zero because you can have failure of underground fuel storage tanks, even on dry land. Of course, it would be more damaging in a wet area because there would be seepage into water easily. So that
And if
risk
it end
is
up into our lakes.
yes, that risk is not zero, but it is very insignificant and is mitigatable. It is mitigatable through proper maintenance of the facility of underground tanks. All petrol stations have that risk.
So for now, Dr. Kankwasa, you are comfortable with Starbucks being there?
Well, it is there legally. That's all I can say. If you asked me whether it is the best place for it, I would say it is not the best place for it. It is not the best place. It can be better elsewhere. But it was legally established there, and the government works through the law.
But
This
now
is
you have
a
the power
legitimate
because
government.
you have the power because you're the one in the chair right now. And if you think it's not the right place for it to be, then
No, it was assessed and deemed right, remember? And nothing has changed to warrant intervention of reversal. If it had been put there illegally, without government approval, you can be very sure it wouldn't be there as we are speaking here. You could be 100% sure. But because it was put there legally and there was assessment and the risks we are talking about were evaluated then and found to be mitigatable. Like I told you before, every development has impacts. Even you just breathing, just your own breathing has impacts because you are releasing
Carbon dioxide.
carbon dioxide. So every form of development has impacts. What is important is, are the impacts mitigatable? So it was assessed, evaluated, and deemed mitigatable. That's why it was authorized then. And there is no externality, no intervening natural phenomena has occurred to warrant me reversing the decision.
Interesting. Dr. Kankwasa, the last one, but not the least certainly, is the issue of Zoka Forest. I know that as NEMA, you oversee generally the environment, and that is according
we
to
are the regulators.
You're the regulator, the ombudsman. Zoka Forest has been in the headlines for quite a while. That forest, I don't know if you've been there in Adjumani, one of the best natural reserves, like forest, it's just amazing. But there is heavy destruction of that forest. They are cutting down trees at the barrow of the gun. Big old trees. I mean, I had an opportunity of doing an investigation there. They're cutting the trees. There is charcoal production at industrial scale. There is timber that is coming out of that forest. There is heavy deployment of the military and the police there. The local authorities have even given up. And even when I was there, I've been asking myself, what is NEMA doing about this? What is the National Forest Authority doing about this? Have they been overrun? I would love to hear from you as the Environment Ombudsman. What is happening in Zoka Forest Reserve in Adjumani?
It's true that there are encroachments and illegal activities going on in Zoka, and they are largely occasioned by weak enforcement and administrative challenges at NFA, especially during the transition. But even before the transition, the capacity of NFA was very limited, if you asked me. I always tell people that to get conservation results, you must invest. You don't get conservation results for miracles. You must invest. NFA was responsible for 506 Central Forest Reserves in Uganda. 506. The total number of staff of NFA were less than 350. I want you to do the mathematics. 506 is the number of Central Forest Reserves. Your staff is less than the number of Central Forest Reserves. I will give you a contrast opinion. In contrast, Uganda Wildlife Authority, which is responsible for 10 national parks and 13 wildlife reserves, I repeat, 10 national parks, 13 wildlife reserves, has more than 2,500 staff. 2,500 staff. That's why people will not bash me for occurrences in the national parks, in wildlife, because there is progress, quite substantial progress. Why? There is substantial investment. At least you are sure that a national park boundaries are surveyed. They are surveyed and surveyed routinely. There is surveillance to say who has entered in a national park, who has gone out. There is proper management because there is capacity. So the problem of Zoka is not unique to Zoka only. It is actually replicated elsewhere in Mabira and some other forest reserves. The challenges are true, they are there, and the government will take measures. Now that NFA has been rationalized, government must take measures, urgent, adequate measures to do demarcation and boundary surveillance of all Central Forest Reserves, but also recruit and deploy personnel to manage these reserves. I can tell you that if we are to rely only on the goodwill of citizens to do good, natural resources will disappear. Of course, it is also good to over militarize and over prioritize enforcement. You have to strike a balance. But if you have a society that does not believe in self-policing, what do? Wildlife example has been a clear one where actually personnel and the force has delivered the results. The national parks are intact. The wildlife reserves, yes, challenges are there, but largely intact. That's why most of the wildlife species are increasing. Do you know that the Uganda cobs, the number of Uganda cobs we had at independence is now already surpassed? We have more Uganda cobs than we had at independence, despite the population of Ugandans having almost changed by 3 times. So the question I'm saying is, I admit there are conservation challenges at Zoka, and
you see, I don't know, but do you know, Dr. Kankwasa, that all this happens with heavy deployment of military men in Zoka and police officers?
They are not enough.
No, but the thing is then when you talk to the locals there and the central government, there is a general feeling that this is done, in coordination with men up the ranks in the military and in the police. The men, for example, the local authorities impound vehicles and the call comes from above, release them and they go. For example, the heavy trucks that leave Zoka Forest, they're like untouchable. It is impunity. If you go to, I don't know if you've gotten your finger on the pulse of what's happening in Zoka, but it's terrible what's happening there. And I would really encourage you to go to Adjumani and really do some fact finding yourself.
I take the challenge. I wouldn't discount corruption. I wouldn't say there is zero corruption in enforcement. No, I wouldn't say so. So the challenges you are raising could be true. I have no evidence, so I can neither confirm them nor deny them until I have facts.
Dr. Kankwasa, all these things, you know what really annoys me is that you've talked about that. I mean, go to Zoka, go to Budongo, go to Mavira. All these things are happening right before our own eyes, but there's a general sense of resigning, from our responsibility as citizens, as government, to protect our natural resources.
The primary responsibility to protecting our natural resources lies with me and you, the citizens. Because government is holding these resources in a trust, but we are the rightful owners, me and you, as citizens. And who is destroying them? It is again me and you. So it takes more than government. I know government must take lead, but let's not forget also to call upon citizens to behave as citizens.
Dr. Kankwasa, look at Mavira. The forest that, your forefathers, and even you when you're young, I mean, you drive through Mavira and you're like, wow.
For Mavira, some of the reported, cases are actually not encroachment. Mavira is like Queen Elizabeth National Park. Queen Elizabeth National Park has what we call fishing villages, which are within the park but are not part of the park. So same applies to Mavira. Mavira has villages within it which are not part of the Central Forest Reserve. They are establishments of people with even governments and health facilities. So those are historically there. They have been there. They are not part of the gazetted Central Forest Reserve. But I'm not saying there is no challenge of encroachment and illegal logging. It is there. And even NFA itself has made arrests, including of its own, for abating illegal logging there in Mavira. So I'm not discounting the challenge. The challenge is there. But what people show that it is Horo and the villages, those are not part of the Central Forest Reserve.
But there are those forests that we used to really cherish as Ugandans. Maybe it's a shame that we are losing some of those right before our own eyes.
Absolutely. I agree with you. It's a shame. We must be
ashamed. And you
as
the environmental ombudsman should be ashamed.
Well, it takes not only the ombudsman, but all of us. So yes, in terms of collective responsibility, I am not innocent either. Because despite challenges of lack of capacity or what have you, I still take responsibility for what is not going on well. But it is you and me again to correct that mistake.
But Dr. Kankwasa, what are we left with as a country in terms of our natural resources?
It seems you don't have statistics. In 2015, the forest cover of Uganda had declined from 24%, as you know, to only 9% of the total land surface of Uganda. You are aware? Just 2015. The forest cover in this country was 9%. So, for the first time in the history of Uganda, we have seen a change of the curve in the last 5 to 10 years. The forest cover has now started improving, and it has improved from 9% of total land surface to now 13%. This has not happened in the country since its existence. Why? The country has been experiencing explosion of population growth. So the population curve has been going up all through. In fact, from 1980 there to now, the population has more than tripled. You check population statistics. So population tripling means triple pressure on the ecosystems. Because people are not going to heaven, they are here. And now with the improved health services and the well-being of people of Uganda, the rate of death is low, and things that used to reduce population naturally, things like immunizable diseases, are now all solved. So the population growth is steadily moving up. Now, correspondingly, the natural resources have been declining. So it is proportionate to the population. But we have now seen a change in tide for the first time. The forest cover has improved from 9% to 13%. We must be proud as a nation. It is not happening in many countries. In many countries, the population is up, natural resources are down because they are opposite. Let me come to the wetland, where everyone is saying we are doing badly. Do you know that Uganda is the best country overall in Africa in protection of wetlands? Did you know?
When Rera is being destroyed.
Despite all that, be proud, walk head high, because we are top in Africa and not very far. Even globally, we are doing very well. Let me give you statistics. On average, the wetland cover of any country in Africa, the average is 3%. 3% of the total land surface of a country. Even in East Africa, where you are closer, because that one is home, the average wetland cover in East Africa is less than 8%. The highest, apart from Uganda, has 10%. Uganda has 13.9%
of wetland cover.
Wetland cover as a percentage of total land surface. So despite all the problems you are seeing, which I acknowledge because they are there, if they were not there, our wetland cover would remain intact from 15%, which it was, and not 13.9%. So I'm not saying the challenges are not there, I'm acknowledging them. And there is pressure. That's why we've lost part of our wetland from 15% to 13.9%. But I'm saying despite all those pressures, we have performed so well that no country in Africa can match us. Despite the population growing threefold, we have maintained our wetland cover at 13.9%. We have not ended there. In the last 5 years, we have even improved the intact wetland cover from 8.9% in 2021 to now 9.3% through restoration efforts, which you've been talking about. So it's not that wetlands are not under pressure. No, the pressure is
And this
immense.
data is done by NEMA.
No, this data is international. You can get it from UNEP, you can get it from NEMA. It is international. We are not in charge of wetlands in Kenya or Tanzania or Rwanda, no.
Because I mean, those statistics are impressive. So
Absolutely, this is United Nations. Yeah, so the average wetland cover in the world is 6% in the world. Uganda, we are at 13.9%. That is not to say that we should chest up ourselves and say we are still doing well, let's go and sleep. No, the pressure is still real. The population explosion is real. The backfilling at night is still happening. And soon you will hear our operations. They have not gone away. We are coming back in a big way.
Okay, thanks a lot. We are closing the show, but what does the next few years look like for NEMA? What do you see?
Oh, the future of NEMA is very bright.
By the way, you're operating a budget of 40 billion.
Yeah.
40 billion shillings.
Yes. When I came in, NEMA had a budget of 13 billion.
At that time, the president was describing it as a toothless dog that doesn't bite.
Yes, because I mean, NEMA had a total staffing level of 119. That's including drivers.
Across the country.
Yeah, 119. It is less than the number of districts in Uganda. So we came in and restructured the whole institution. We created a new structure and started recruitment. And I thank government, as you have rightly said, the budget has moved from 13 billion to 40 billion. This is still a drop in the ocean because our optimal budget is 170 billion. So we are still operating at less than 30% of the optimum budget. But of course, there is progress. In Uganda, they say, basima bongerwa. So we thank government for having moved us from 13 billion to now 40 billion, for having moved us in the last 4 years from 119 staff to now 250 staff. We are now 250.
So we expect much from you.
Yeah, that's why you are able to see us now in areas like Rubiji, where you've not seen us. You are able to see us now, biting. So the staffing has improved slightly from 119 to 250, but the structure has 500. So once we get more wage, we shall fill the structure. But the good news is that government has allowed us to implement Section 25 of National Environment Act, which establishes Environment Protection Force, an independent force in-house, the way UWA has a ranger force in-house. So that if I send Solomon to go and enforce in Zoka, and there is no enforcement in Zoka, I deal with Solomon.
So you're going to have
in-house force. Yes.
In-house.
In-house.
But you have the Environment Protection Force, right?
We have Environment Protection Police Unit.
Yes.
Which is a department under Uganda Police.
Yes.
But they are also too few. I have only 40 for the whole country. Just 40. Recently, UPDF also supported us with 50.
But now you're going to do your own.
Our own. So that the police and the UPDF come in to support, to supplement. You cannot support somebody who is at zero. We are currently at zero. So we entirely depend on the support of Uganda Police Force and the UPDF recently, which gave us 50. But still 50 plus 40, that's 90. Do you know the number of districts in Uganda now? By any chance? So our total armed personnel capacity is 50 plus 40. That's 90. So before you judge us of not being effective, first understand the circumstances. My total force is 90. Total force capacity is 90. It is still less than the number of districts
But now you're going to create your own internal force.
Aha. We have recruited about 80 people, but we need at least 2,000 people to begin with. Because these will not only help NEMA work only, they will also support wetlands management. They will also go to support forests. So support us to realize this dream. We've already recruited 80. They are going into training next month. The Uganda Police Force will train them in Masindi Police Training School. So that will be, in my view, a game changer, because our biggest gap is really enforcement. Now, in terms of NEMA's prospects for the next 5 years, I wanted to share with you where we have come from. Very, very, very quickly. In 2021, NEMA used to process just 1,400 environment and social impact assessment certificates.
People would really worry that
5 years
you
waiting.
take years.
Yes.
People in the queue.
Yes.
Projects are stalling because they don't have
Yes.
NEMA.
Listen to the good news. In 2025, NEMA now processes annually 4,589 applications from 1,000. So we've more than, it is not triple now, it is from 1,500. That's now our capacity. You were saying you expect better results because we have better money and better personnel compared to the past. And yes, the results are here. From 1,400 applications to 4,500. Look at the audits, annual audits. In 2021, annual audits processed at NEMA were 521, just 521. In 2025, it is 5,360 annually. So whereas money may not have tripled, we've produced beyond actually the tripling. Criminal cases, this enforcement. In 2021, only 69 cases could be instituted, criminal cases against environmental offenders. Now, in 2015 alone, we instituted 606 cases, criminal cases against environmental offenders. If you go to Machi in the Wildlife and Utilities Court, we are one of the most busy entity in terms of giving them business. So the institution has automated all its business processes. To get an EIA certificate or license in NEMA now, you don't need to come to Ginger Road. You start on your phone, on your computer, pay on your computer, get your certificate on your computer.
How long does it take now, the turnaround time?
The turnaround time is within statutory period. Under the law, it is 60 working days. But some can even come within a week.
Nice.
We've seen certificates coming out within a month. So a lot has changed because of automation and a few numbers. If we could get more numbers and also automate all the business process, I should be in the office and see in real time what is going on in Arubata in Gurabe. I should be in the office and see in real time where a wetland has been encroached upon, where a house has come up. That's the power of technology. And that's where we want to see NEMA. We want to see AI. We want to see artificial intelligence and technology play a significant role in the management of the environment. We want to see enhanced enforcement. We want to see enhanced public awareness. Recently, we signed an MOU with the Buganda Kingdom. You are aware. We believe that NEMA alone or NEMA and the government alone cannot deliver the environment. We need the partnership of everybody. That's why we have gone to partner with cultural institutions. We've gone to partner with religious institutions so that environment management becomes a citizen-led revolution.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kankwasa Orega, for your time. Really appreciate you.
Thank you, Solomon. Pleasure always hosting me.
All right. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Solomon Serwanja, and this is The Hard Questions.
Thanks for tuning in. Your feedback is highly valuable. Scan the QR code to share your thoughts.